start now. Welcome to another very exciting kingscrusher radio show. So this is Tuesday around 9:10. I'm mute here. 9:10 kingscrusher radio show on a Tuesday. I thought we'd look at Magnus Carlsen and Karjakin. This is part 5 of that series. So let's continue this week. So the first game that I'd like to show you is from the World Rapid Championship in 2012. So this is in Astana, Kazakhstan, I think, K-A-Z, Kazakhstan. Okay. In this encounter, Magnus Carlsen was 2.837 and Karjakin's ratings listed as 2.779. I think these might be the rapid ratings. So let's go. Magnus Carlsen played e4, and we have e5. We go into here a Roy de Paz. Let's actually add a Kibitzer, and also I'll be checking Livebook as well. So now knight f6 is played, the very solid Berlin defense. So by Karjakin, and now a kind of surprisingly energetic move in the center, d4. It is a rapid game. So d4 is actually like the 5th most popular choice. It's meant to be about equal. We have e takes, and then white just castles temporarily a pawn down, a6. The bishop takes on c6. Knight takes d4. Bishop c5. We have c3 supporting that knight. So it looks a bit like a Scotch game by transposition. Karjakin castles, and we have f3 supporting that centre pawn. So out of the opening, black has the bishop pair, but white has a better pawn structure. You can see also this pawn is kind of dangerous potentially in the center. So this e4 pawn, this pin could be quite annoying for black. Now, in light of this pin, actually, white is potentially might be just in that. But anyway, we see knight d7. So what's the idea? Well, the knight can plant itself on e5. We see bishop e3. The knight does come to e5. So here, white needs to be very cautious about things. The knight's coming potentially to c4 as one idea. Also, it might be dangerous queen h4 sometimes. We have queen e2, at least guarding c4 for a moment. Queen e7. Knight d2. f6. The king comes off this potentially dangerous diagonal, so sidestepping that potentially dangerous diagonal. And now bishop d6, as though there might be some danger on h2 here coming up, brewing up. Rook e1, but Magnus Carlsen's position here seems quite harmonious. There's no bad piece here. The rooks are together. The knight's kind of nice on c5. Now c5 does seem forcing me, but it's quite committal. It might be weakening d5 a little bit, and it's actually played though. Oh, pardon me. c5 is actually played, hitting the knight. And it's interesting here. Magnus, he doesn't mind his pawn structure being compromised after knight f5. Black takes. So he's got double pawns here, but he's got that e4 square. Queen e7. Now this knight's kicked. The pawn is supported. So white's got a potential grip on the light squares. But, okay, black is quite quick on the e file here. We see queen f3. And now bishop f8 is played. I think this pawn's not too good to take here. Knight e4 was played. If queen takes, black's going to get loads of play just by doing that and this. So not taking that pawn is a good idea. Instead, knight e4, which looks at taking this pawn. It's only protected by the bishop. Now we see, actually, you might think the way to protect this pawn would be a move like b6. That wasn't played. Maybe it might be okay. We see instead queen d3. Okay, queen d3. So kind of pinning to the queen, because then also there's rook takes e1 after. So this definitely, it does seem to stop bishop takes c5 here. If just to show that if bishop takes c5, we take the queen, then we just take here, just winning a piece. So queen d3 by Karjakin is it's seemingly a nice tactical restraining move. So what to do here? Knight f2 is played, kicking the queen. Now queen b5, looking at simply nabbing this pawn. Now this is actually ignored here. It's probably a little bit tricky actually how to defend this. Although rook e2 does seem like an obvious way, but instead just going for black's king over here, g5, that's played instead, offering the b2 pawn. It's quite dangerous for black on the king side here. So that's very interesting. g5 here, just offering b2. Okay, so what do you think about this? Do you think this is very good? Who do you think is better? So white or black here? Who do you prefer after g5? Do you think black's going to be scooping up lots of material, or what about the king? Who do you think is better after g5? Who would you prefer? Any ideas? Who would you say at the moment? If I gave you, like, let's predict, who do you think's better here? Who do you think is going to win this position? Any ideas? It's actually quite an exciting position. In many ways, doesn't it seem cheeky to go after a queenside pawn? Isn't it more logical for white to just try and smash through the king side? As an attacking player, I obviously prefer white actually. Sometimes you can let queenside pawns go. You just want to like tear open opponent's king. King's crushing. So actually, but black's choices are limited. Black did nab the pawn. If he does take on g5, this position, let's have a look at this. With queen takes b2. g6 is very dangerous. Probably winning here, this position. We can actually get a king's crushing position. We're threatening f7 shack here. This looks diabolical. This sort of thing looks absolutely diabolical for Karjakin. His king is shot to pieces. He's going to get obliterated in that sort of scenario. So best not to, best probably not to play f takes g5. So he just took the pawn here. By not playing this, he's keeping these pawns doubled as well, and that might be an important defensive consideration here. Well, the concrete thing is if g6 is effective or not. Is it effective here? Well, actually, Magnus doesn't even play g6. He plays g takes. If he plays g6 here, then this position, lo and behold, is perfectly safe. White hasn't got the dynamic crashing through business. You know, you could do this, but maybe just even this, and then what for white? Or even just taking here. The engines think this is safe enough. You can see the dynamism is limited there compared to the other variation. So it's actually a better choice here to play g takes f6, it seems. And that seems to be a much better choice, technically at least. So white just at least wants to break open that g file. Let me. That's a really good point defensively, though. That, you know, sometimes, you know, to actually defend, you've got to minimise the opponent's, you know, dynamic pawn moves. So yeah, this is minimising white's dynamic play, it seems. But again, there's this choice. Do you really want to play this and unleash the G file here? Instead, we can actually, well, Karjakin actually took on C3. So he's got an eye defensively on G7 here. And also this bishop. Now, if he did play G takes F6, there seems to be a couple of pulverizing moves in this position. It's best he doesn't actually. There's an engine move here which seems fascinating, and there's another move which seems very strong as well. Okay, let's have a little pop quiz here. This wasn't played. G takes F6 wasn't played. Queen takes C3 was played. But what could you play here with white? This is just a variation. White's play. I mean, this is a variation which never happened. What could you consider playing here? There seems to be a crushing move in this position. What would you play here? What the attacking players thinking? What would you play here? There's obviously a G file crying out for an attack, but is there anything more subtle and effective, do you think, than just plonking a rook on the G file? This position is Magnus Carlsen's Karjakin in the World Rapid Championship of 2012, if you just joined us. So this is a rapid game, so usually about 30 minutes, but often with increments. It's kind of high quality compared to Blitz chess. Okay, let's examine some of the suggestions here. Rook G1 seems the most obvious. That might be good. It's still good for white. This position. That is actually a very logical, sensible move. But even stronger, apparently, is Queen D5 first. So trying to make this even more effective, because we're tying down the king to F7, so we're keeping this check in reserve. That's the engine suggestion. So say here, check, the king can't move without dropping F7. And if bishop G7, then knight G4, and the king's not in an ideal spot on the G file. And black actually now is given, like, this is given the best sequence, which doesn't seem very healthy. There is a check here, it doesn't really do much. This is the piece down for black. So Queen D5 seems to be the bone crushing move here instead of the natural looking check. There's Fischer's quotation, Patzer sees a check, plays a check, but in this case there's a more effective way of bringing out the power of the check. You know, moving the king, when you move someone's king, the king is actually defending F7 here. So this is interesting from an attacking player's point of view. You don't just want to checkmate the king. You sometimes also want to just win material. So what is the king clinging onto? Creating a loose piece, basically. You're using the check basically to create a loose piece here with Queen D5 on F7. That's an interesting consideration. It's sort of very natural to play these checks, though. Another strong move might be knight E4, looking at F6. And this is, I mean, what does black do here? This looks terrible. If this sort of position, I think black's just getting slaughtered in a different way. Queen H5. And there's slaughter time like this, for example. Yeah, this is all like crashing through, right? Black's king. So really dangerous position here. So anyway, G takes F6 was not played. We see actually Queen takes C3. And now after F takes G7 was played, you might think black doesn't even have to take. Surely you can use that as a shield. Well, the thing is, if he tries to use that as a shield, knight E4, bang, hits the queen, and we're on that F6 square. So say something like this, rook G1. This is horrible. We're going to kick the queen, and we're going to use that F6 square soon. It's horrible for black. So that's the problem. It seems to be like giving white too many squares to leave that pawn. Bishop E7 again, knight E4, if the queen moves here, okay, we're covering F6 here, but this is still dangerous for black. We still got things like f6. What does black do here? It looks dangerous for different reasons. Okay, maybe not immediately winning, but still not great. This threatening this, so there's no here. It's still pretty good for white, this position. What? This pin again. This is an example line. It's just good for white. So it's all pretty good for white there if the pawn is left. If you think the pawn can be left, yeah, it's still good, pretty good for white. So bishop takes g7 is actually probably one of the better moves. We have rook g1. So again, this knight e4 looks good with tempo on the queen, and then f6. Black sidesteps getting out of the pin. And yeah, I mean, knight e4 does seem like a natural and strong move. The engines like that. Magnus actually played a different move. He took on b7 here. Took on b7. Yeah, now being a pawn over here. It does immediately fragment all of these pawns though. And the rook's kind of tied down to its fellow rook, so there's no winning a bishop on e3. We see knight d6 hitting the queen. Queen comes to d5 now, and so this structure has been terribly compromised. But there might be some also like issues to watch out for. We see knight takes f5, trying to drag the queen away from here, from there rather, because it's looking at a8. At the moment, rook takes e3. Again, it's not possible because queen takes a8. So this looks like a clever tactical move by Karjakin, trying to distract the queen away from a8. And it's hitting the bishop. Bishop takes c5. And here, I was thinking, isn't it anyone's game here? And in fact, the engine evaluation here is not that impressive. It seems, you know, taking on b7, I know this is only like a rapid game, but it might not have been the best course. Maybe, you know, Magnus could have played the position earlier a bit more like Tau, to be honest. But he's doing the Magnus grind a bit, you know, by going into this continuation, because it's all more about like the fragmented pawn structure here. Now, before we go on for move 28, I just want to show you, yeah, just okay for a moment. Knight e4, just trying to keep the g-file attack alive. But here, you know, it does seem as though, where is the attack? And here, you might as well just take here again. So actually, you know, it's not so clear how the attack could have happened with that g-file. So anyway, let's go back here. So knight takes f5. We have bishop takes c5. And it's 3 pawns each. And it looks as though, you know, Karjakin's well back in the game here. Hitting the queen, we have an exchange of rooks. And now this knight is immune. If that's taken, we're losing control of f3, right? So if takes, it's actually a mate in 2. This is something to be avoided. This mate in 2 here. That knight cannot be taken. We see knight d3 shielding the f3 square from the queen, centralizing. And in fact, queen takes f5 is now threatened, as well as things like this. Queen d7 hits g7, and this one. So, well, the knight's protecting g7, so mainly about this one. So we see queen f coming to f6, rook g5, threatening rook takes, rook d8. We see now going into this ending, and it doesn't seem at all like as if there's anything to play for now, because it's like equal on pawns. And the excitement's died away, surely, but it's just a rapid game actually. And Magnus plays on. He's got his more active rook. The king is a bit more cut off. This more active rook, more active king potentially. Check, check, taking a pawn. Pawn equality is restored. King g8. We see h4, and this potentially is uncomfortable getting a pawn up here. The more aggressive king is white's trump card now. It doesn't seem like much compared to before, but there is a lot of potential for torture here, actually. Rook c2, check. The king is coming aggressively. Magnus' king is a bit like a Steinitzian king. Steinitz believed the king is an an attacking piece and should be used. It is more aggressive than the black king, and these annoying checks on the 7th rank are unpleasant. Check, the king is stepping to f5 here without further harassment, it seems. Bishop d4 trying to exploit the pin. Check. Bishop d6. And now this bishop e5 looks... no, the bishop e5 in the future is going to be good, not at the moment because the king's on a8. So once, say, the rook moves somewhere, like somewhere, then maybe bishop e5. Not for the moment. We see rook c6. The rook steps away. There's a few ideas though. It's trying to squeeze with this pawn as well. And in fact, okay, bishop c5. We see the check now. Check. Black doesn't want to lose h7. We have a torture scenario, and the pawn is used. It's brought up potentially. I know at the moment the rook's looking at that square. Rook a7. This is torture because the rook is more aggressive than this rook. The king is more aggressive than this king. Small trump cards, but they're not going away. That's the thing. And in fact, very, very interesting move here. Bishop g7 was played. Black dare not take this because the king will get so aggressive after king e6. It's winning. This position looks to be winning with check and then bishop f6. This position here, I don't think black can actually defend this at all. Say he tries to stick a rook on d8. Well, we can just take that. So there's no way of defending this position. For example, here, check, and then here, well, it might be more incisive. Just rook takes e7, in fact. Yeah, the king is not just stopping the black king. We're threatening rook takes e7 as well. So there's actually no defense in this position. If rook takes, this is curtains, this is end of game, this position here, it seems absolutely end of game. So that king cannot be allowed to step to e6. After bishop g7. Okay, so we see the rook's coming across the c6 now, and now h6 cementing a very, very aggressive pawn. So these little trump cards, I mean, I think they're worth considering, even if you're playing someone much higher rated. If you can like grind a win out of this sort of simplified position, that's pretty amazing stuff. But they are very strong trump cards in this simplified position, it seems. Well, a small edge for white from the engine point of view only, but it looks more impressive, I mean, from my perspective, than maybe what it is. But it does seem very, very impressive, white's piece activity here. King f7, king e4. So maybe this pawn is coming up. What's happening? Check. Rook h8, trying to nab this pawn. Check. Check. Bishop e5. So this pawn would mean a very fast pass pawn here. Bishop f8. This doesn't really... black's crumbling actually now after check. Very big pass pawn. Check. And now the finishing touch here, white play. There's a crushing move in this position. So white play here. Do you see it? There's a finishing, crushing blow in this position. What does white play here? $100 points at stake. 1,000 points at stake. 2,000 points at stake. Okay, all right, yeah. Rook takes f8. And black resign, because here we have h7, and one of these pawns is going to queen, either this one when it comes there. So after takes, black might be able to stop that one, but not this one. It's too far away. Bang bang, end of game. Yeah, it looks Strange game, because it looks as though where did white's advantage go, but Magnus definitely had very, very concrete trump cards. All this chaos, I know it looked like a major attack, but it just had to remain behind the scenes, because actually Karjakin played the defensive side very well, it seems. Very, very well. It seems he wasn't that easy to hack at all, the way he played it. So even though he was a bit greedy, it seemed, on the queen side, picking up these pawns, this position is difficult apparently to hack. I know the hackers might be disappointed, but the queen is also tying down white, this horrible pin. I mean, white's pretty tied down actually. He hasn't exactly got, you know, a free hand to attack with. So what he did, this transitioning into the endgame, it's interesting how, though, this king became a major trump card. If we look at this simplification here, how did white still get the trump cards here? I mean, it seems like a little bit strange, perhaps, to consider that white has an advantage here. But the king is definitely, I mean, definitely more aggressive. And the rook is just that target. The bishop is not tied down to the king here. The bishop, the pawn, this is just very, very bad news, this rook on the 7th. So I think it's quite interesting how this led to a grind position with that very, very aggressive king. But probably black might have missed some defensive tricks around here. I played rook h6. Apparently rook b6. Well, even with rook c6, this position, he played king f7. Yeah, apparently, you know, it's just difficult to defend though, I think. Instead of check here, apparently here, there's bishop f6. This might be a much better shot. So if takes, we can play this and then reach equality, basically, near the absolute equality. So that might have been a major trick actually here, on the point of losing this point. Bishop f6. If takes, take this position. This might have been the way for black to try and equalize. Here, it's getting tricky to win this. Okay, anyway, let's have a look at another game. It's only a rapid game anyway, so yeah. So that was a rapid game. Now this one, there's actually a video for the entire game, which is quite entertaining. You could check it out on YouTube. Chaps Vibes did it at the time. There's actually, you can see the video of this next. This is a Blitz encounter, which is kind of interesting to check out. The confidence expressed at the board for both players is really quite good. I mean, I'll check out the video, the real life footage for this game. So this is in the World Blitz Championship of 2012. So October the 7th, Magnus was white, played e4. So I'll try and provide a link in the description. You can find, well, you can find it as well. I can paste you where there's a link for the real-time footage for this. I'll just paste it on stream and on, at least. There's a real footage link for this, but let's have a look at this game now. Okay. So Magnus playing white. We have Roy Lopez, d3. So this is Berlin defense, but this sidesteps a lot of the theory of the Berlin. So this move is getting really popular. Just d3. So bishop c5. Magnus just takes on c6. And white's play here does revolve around a lot of pressure on e5 pretty soon. Black castles for the moment. Bishop g4, h3, the bishop drops back. Knight c4. So black has to defend now e5. Bishop e3, wanting a bit of dynamic play. If takes, then obviously we got dynamic choices here. Black really doesn't want to take here, I think, because maybe better. Yeah, actually, it might be better just to take with the knight, actually. But anyway, black just retracts his bishop d6. It looks pretty defensive. bishop g5, annoying pin, h6 here, now g5 after some thought, but Magnus is not being kicked back here. He plays an interesting move actually. He plays g4 in response, and both players slide their bishops back here and here now, because black plays bishop g6 and then bishop g3. But technically it seems as though here there might have been, it might have been possible to take here. It looks pretty dangerous for black more than white to be this greedy. Black is holding h4, but we're fast on the g file, right? But anyway, something persuaded Karjakin this isn't the way to go. Although this might technically be the best way for black to go. There's a knight potentially slipping into f5 for a start. I mean, this might have been a danger signal to bear in mind, but you know, maybe black's got some. It's tricky for black. It's more tricky. It might be easier for white to play. It was avoided anyway. This whole thing was avoided. Black just played bishop g6. He didn't want to take on h4. But there's a big problem with this whole thing here. This position, there's a very big problem strategically. White has a very, very comfortable knight maneuvering plan to get into f5. And we'll see, you know, this plan implemented. The thing is, whenever black takes on f5 there, then white could use the e4 square. And this always remains like potentially vulnerable pawn as well, but the e4 square. So just watch this plan evolve now. But first, Magnus plays on the king side with h4. We have f6, and now this plan is put into place. Knight e3 to go to f5. King g2 allows rook h1, very nifty stuff. So, very nice attacking position it seems. Takes. Now knight f5. You might think, cannot black like take immediately and then may play e4? He didn't do this. He actually, black played knight e6 trying to get into the corresponding f4 square from this knight. If black tries bishop takes f5 immediately, then not e takes, actually e4 does seem effective and nice for black to break up the center. But actually, yeah, more sensible here seems g takes f5 with some prospects of things to happen. So that wasn't taken there. We have knight e6 instead. Rook h1. Queen d7. Now rook h3 shows that things like queen h1 might be in the air. Now black is in a difficult position. He did actually play bishop takes f5. And here knight f4 check. But this looks to be what they sometimes call a strategically dead position, this position here, because this knight, if it gets to e4, unless there's going to be an exchange sack, this knight's not going to go anywhere. It's going to sit pretty in the center, putting pressure on black's position, and white then could just build up. It seems as though black has lost the strategic battle. Obviously white is seeing the tactics. He can't play knight e4 immediately because there's bang, rook takes e4. No, but in principle black is strategically busted. Queen f3 first, so knight e4 to follow. Bishop g7, knight e4. This looks to me, I hope some of you might see it the same way, but it looks as though black is dead here strategically. Would you agree? Would you agree black is dead? Black is dead strategically. So that's my question. Think about it. You might think, oh, black's got an amazing position. No, I think black's dead strategically looking at this. Remember, it's just the Blitz game. I know we shouldn't analyse Blitz games that much, but this is like the highest class Blitz going. It was probably with increment as well. So, you know, they're not like Blitz like you get online. This is like high quality Blitz with increment. So yeah, it looks to me as though black's dead strategically here. What do you think about this? So it seems as though the opening's been a great success here, but also consider white's got this grip on the H file, which, okay, black might try and contest, but okay, there's an infiltration already with rook H7, so this might even be stronger, just to do this, to pin that bishop immediately, might even be stronger than this. Maybe the queen can be a nuisance, but anyway, rook H7, if queen D5 here, then queen H3, and we're looking at queen H5. This is really dangerous. So this is making way for the queen to come and support the rook. So it's parried with rook H8. Queen comes here anyway. Rook takes, queen takes. The queen's got that beautiful G6 square, which she uses, and now winning a pawn. Knight takes F6, which also, unfortunately for black, covers that D5 square. Otherwise, there might be a useful check. Queen F7. Magnus is not here interested in the queens coming off. He plays check. And the problem here is, if black plays king G8, then black's losing another pawn, because this pawn's dropping. Can't really do this, losing another pawn. That's just hopeless for black. So we see actually a rather desperate looking rook takes H7, losing the exchange. Check. Is there any counterplay? Any checks coming in? Well, we see a very interesting move here. Well, there's two, in fact. There's rook F1 as well, because if this queen infiltrates, we've got rook F2 then. So I'm not going to ask yet. But Magnus played an even more strange looking than that. He played, well, a little bit, king F1. The idea is to be able to support the king, to support rook E1, to get this E file. And any attack here, he's going to parry with this. So queen E3, he parries with queen H3. And he's still got now this threat of rook E1, which his king has supported. So rook E1 coming down the E file. Black nabs a pawn. We have this E file, which is very significant here, because after check, bishop G7, guess what white plays here, celebrating this E file. White to play in this position. What would you play in this position? I'll give you a few seconds. Crushing. There's quite crushing. There's two crushing moves, which are fairly obvious, actually. Okay, either. I mean, actually, you know. Okay, now queen G6 was played, threatening mate. That's pretty crushing. Apparently queen takes G5 is pretty good as well. Now F6, I mean, it might so either queen move is really dangerous. Queen G6 was played, and black played the last throw of the dice here with bishop E5, which I don't think actually works anyway. White could actually just take this anyway. There's not even a perpetual check. But the even stronger F6 was played, so that if takes we mate black. It's just end of game. But even with the checks, I think black's just losing here. Check here, check. Just go here. Yeah. So yeah, that was a bit of a crunch after. I know it's only a blitz game though, but something happens strategically quite bad to black. I mean, this F5 square, for some reason, it just seemed more significant than white's corresponding F4 square. White was first to capitalize on F5, getting a good square for his knights later. I mean, this position is just bad for black. I mean, yeah, this more aggressive pawns, entry points potentially. Yeah, it's just, it looks to be just massively in white's favour, this position. In fact, there might have even been stronger with knight c5. This is the materialistic way of playing it. Not as far on knight e6. Then we're on g7. Again, it's pretty strong attacking stuff this position is. These pawns are just too good. This kind of position is just winning as well. Couldn't win like this. Check. Yeah, there's knight c5 might even have been technically even stronger than rook h7. It's just such a strong position strategically. That knight is just a monster. So let's have a look at another game. I hope you got something from that. So the third game I'd like to show you this evening. Now this is a long game, a long serious game. Encounter. They do have a lot of fun at Blitz and Rapid, these two, in the early encounters. Now this encounter was a Tatar Still 2012. Magnus Carlsen was playing white. This was played in the Netherlands, 24th of January 2012. Tatar Still. Let's have a look at this game. So Magnus Carlsen playing white. Played knight f3. We have knight f6, c4, b6 from Sergey Karjakin. This early b6. It transposes into a Queen's Indian defense now. d4, e6. And this is an interesting line. a3. It's actually the main move here. Stops the pin. Seems to be the main move. d5 the main move. Quite often either takes on d5 simply or plays bishop g5. Now here e3 was played. There's a little wrinkle here. Often queen a4 check is played with the idea of putting that pawn there to inconvenience black. This position is thought to be fairly okay for white. That check, yeah, seems quite useful there in this position. Okay, e3 was played here. This is also played a lot. Rook c1. Quite often the knight comes here, but in this game we see h6. This has been seen quite a bit before. The bishop often drops back, but here we see bishop takes f6 by Magnus Carlsen. A little bit of controversy perhaps, giving up the dark square bishop. You might think bishop d3. c5. White castles. Knight a6. Knight e5. Now Sergey actually took on d4 and gave right back the dark square bishop. Maybe white is threatening f4 here. You can imagine as soon as f4 is played and he takes, we're going to have this lovely dynamic, position. So that's taken immediately, trying to maybe extend this bishop to liberate this bishop in the not too distant future. First knight c5 though. Rook e8. And then this bishop is liberated, so nice. And it's immediately, this might have been a slight inaccuracy here. Knight e4 was played in this position. It seems consideration might be usefully given to knight b5 with the threat of either knight d6 or bishop c4. Knight d6 seems very nice. On this position there is this pin. Maybe this is what concerns Magnus, but here if we play a4, it's okay for white. This position is okay, and maybe even just kick this knight soon. But the way this was played, this might be a mistake. This move knight e4 might be, because black actually played what seems to be a very strong idea indeed. Very, very strong idea. Yeah, black to play What would you play? This seems very, very interesting idea. If I give you 20 seconds, black to play. It looks as though, you know, white is actually threatening. If he's left alone, isn't he just threatening knight d6? Knight d6 seems like a big thing to play for here. Okay, some of you mentioned queen d5. Yeah, that does pin to g2, right? But might not be the best, because there's things like bishop c4 or queen g4, for instance knight f6. If king here, bishop c4, queen moves back, we still get the knight d6. We unpin basically, we still got knight d6, and black's actually falling to bits. Maybe not there. Maybe black can do something weird, some exchange. Say, kick this first, and then play. We can take this actually. No, queen d5 is not so good. It's basically pawns bishop c4s and queen g4. It's not good. No, black actually played what seems to be quite an ingenious continuation. I have to ask, do you want me to change the perspective or keep change the perspective or keep the perspective as white? Because I'm wondering, should we flip the boards here? Does anyone want me to flip the board? Because black might be better here. I just wonder, because if I'm going to ask you guess the moves, I do actually prefer to do that from the side that's slightly better. I don't know. Okay. Right. Okay, no. This is magnificent. So magnificent, I'm going to have to flip the board, yeah? Bishop takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Now, what on earth? Why is this strong? Because after bishop takes e4, right? It looks to be hitting the rook, yeah? But if we move the rook, isn't white just going to blockade on d3? It's just going to move his bishop back here, yeah? But black has another magnificent idea in this position. If I ask you black to play here, what does Sergey Karjakin play in this position? So magnificent that even the magnificent Magnus Carlsen is having difficulty in this position after black's next move. Yeah, okay. 1,000 points at stake. Okay, the move is actually not moving the rook, but d3. d3, losing the rook. Yeah, if bishop takes here, then we can either throw in this check or play d2 immediately. Yeah, so if this bishop comes out here, it seems that black is going to get a fork, a nasty fork in, and be the exchange up. Doesn't matter how, what he does here, there's a fork coming up, or worse. You know, otherwise he's going to lose, it'd be a piece down. If he moves a rook, he's just going to be a piece down, right? And if he moves the bishop, yeah, then we can just I think this one might be less accurate than the other one. It doesn't matter, we're still winning in exchange. But the better rook to take might be this. There's a reason. because this check is winning f4 after, with black the exchange up and white falling to bits. So yeah, magnificent. Unfortunately, the blockade on the pawn has been lifted, and this horrible d2 is available in response to bishop takes a8. Shocking, but true. So this looks as though, what does white do? Okay, you might think, hang on, can you take it here? It's not so hot, this position, because not queen here, because then white would be fine. No. But keeping the pawn with this check, keeping that pawn, and then just taking this here, left this massive pawn, that would be much better for black, winning, in fact, for black. Yeah, for example, this position is horrible for white. Yeah, hit behind the rook, so we move here. So yeah, whatever way it's cut and sliced, this position here is better for black. Amazing, but true. It seems true in all variations. Black is better here. Magnus tried rook c4, so seemingly, you know, still threatening this. Okay, that's true. Okay, that moves. And also, of course, it stopped the check, yeah, that annoying check. You might think, hold on a second, in this position, you might have a pausing thought for b5 with this idea of the check. It's not so hot, this position. Yeah, if we take here, white just takes here, and then takes on d3, fine for white. No, forget b5. No, just the rook moves here. d2 is threatened, as well as knight takes. So we see bishop f5. Yeah, if white doesn't respond to this idea, say here, d2, we can take here, and this one then would lose to rook c1, and this one would lose to, it seems, queen d3 is just winning for black here, because if we try and support the rook, this one is crushing for rook c1. These are all pretty crushing variations. I know this pawn's like doing a lot of magical stuff which didn't seem evident when it was on d5. This pawn here is somehow playing like an expensive attacking player in football. This pawn is getting behind all the defenses somehow in these variations. So anyway, yeah, so we see, you know, rook c8. So white can't even afford a move like king h1. He has to move away from this. All right, he plays bishop f5. Bishop f5. And again, this is not really listened to. Sometimes you don't have to listen to the threat. You can do your own threat if it's a bigger one than the opponent's. That's a bit of a clue. Black to play. Do you move the rook or do you do something else? So black to play here. Oh, black to play here. What would you play in this position with black? You don't want to slip up here. I'll give you a clue, right? If you play this... Sorry, hold on a sec. Whoop. Hello? Sorry. If you play something like this, it's not so hot. The pawn can be blockaded. I think this is not working anyway because of queen d5. But anyway, queen d5 was played immediately yeah, because if this position is not nice here for white, this pawn's really like dangerous. Okay, so we have rook c3. The pawn is supported. Queen d2. What else? Black is threatening to play the check and take this. Actually, that's one of the immediate threats. And if the king had moved here, then we can first kick the bishop onto an awkward diagonal, and then come. This is crushing. Knight e4. It's just a nightmare. What does white do here? How does he defend knight f2? So that's a nightmare. So actually, okay, we see queen d2. Check. Now white is potentially threatening to kick this and win this pawn, so that's put a stop to with a5. Just keeping this wonderful pawn here with a5 for the moment. Rook b1 as though b4 again. That's stopped with a4, clamping down completely on b4, leaving this tremendous pawn for the moment. Rook d1, and now it's given more support with rook d5, because even if it's taken, there's going to be a nasty pin underneath now if it's taken. White played h4, trying to give his king some air. If that pawn is taken here, black just builds up with this move, and then it's horrible. It's a lethal pin, that position. For example here, knight takes e4 isn't so convincing. This is actually okay for white. Oh, this is fascinating actually, pardon me. I say there's a lethal pin here, but not in that way of cashing it out. This is a game continuation. In the game, h4 was played, right? So imagine white did take on d3. Let's imagine white took on d3. So we treble. White plays now queen here to be able to take with a rook, yeah? But it seems as though this is a variation. Black has a very interesting resource in this position. This is an engine resource, by the way. I'm going to ask you about it. Black to play here. There's actually a crushing tactical move, believe it or not. Black to play in this position. White is threatening, by the way. If it was white to move again, white is threatening bishop h7 check, winning the queen. So just be warned about that. But black has an interesting move. Doesn't have to just get 2 rooks for the queen. That's not actually particularly good. There's an interesting idea here for black. Yeah, I'll give you 100 points for one of them and 500 points for the other. I wonder if anyone's going to spot the 500 point one. I'll give you a clue for the 500 point one, yeah? The back row is slightly weak here, isn't it? The back row is slightly weak. And it might be the case that Karjakin saw this amazingly evil idea. Sorry, Carlsen saw this amazingly evil idea. Yeah, either knight e4 or queen e4, but apparently queen e4 is the more crushing. This is the more crushing. Because we're threatening queen takes e2, right? And as well as rook takes d3. If queen f1, knight takes d3 is just winning a piece, isn't it? We're just winning a piece. So this is just a nightmare. This back row is a nightmare. So queen e4 is the brutal computer move, which puts the cat among the pigeons. It puts the fox in the chicken house, in the hen house. Yeah, you know, queen e4. Yeah, this pawn is elevated. Although the pawn's disappeared, you know, it's like the character in Star Wars that disappears, but then is even more powerful. The pawn is even more powerful because it's provided in its absence. The pawn has now provided the power of the force, which is the pin here. Yeah, it's vanished materially, but the pawn's sacrifice has led to this enormous pressure on the d file. But even knight e4 here, even in this position, by the way, knight e4 is also not too bad, actually. Threatening knight f2 check. You know, so if here there's a crushing blow. There's another crushing blow in this position, which there's well, what does black play in this position which is crushing? Oh, this is amazing stuff. Oh, this is more fun than I anticipated. I've got to say, this game, I look at them briefly and I think the tactics behind this game are astonishing. Black to play here. What does black play in this position? It seems queen takes d3 is working out well. There's also, let's not go into that one. This seems the more spectacular. So if takes, we take here, yeah, and if here, then we've got this, and we're still exploiting the back row because we've got this. Piece up, end of game. It seems this is winning in all cases. You know, if here, check, here, here, and we're going to be a piece up after. Yeah, it's all pretty crushing on that d file. So anyway, Magnus bypassed all of this stuff. He played on move 27, he played h4, giving his king that much needed breath of escape. Yeah, the h2 escape. We see now g6 kicking that bishop, it seems. Does it want to go to h3? Not really. If it goes away, then knight e4, bang. Yeah, that's end of game. Yeah, so bishop takes d3 is virtually forced. Now black trebles, and we're simply in the position here which seems amazing and similar to what we've seen. White now plays queen e1 now. Queen e1. Now there's this temptation to get two rooks for the queen, but I don't think it's that good here. If we get two rooks for the queen, this ends up being fine for white. For Magnus Carlsen, this would be fine for white. This position here is fine, it seems. And in fact, you know, black's in trouble. No, we changed tact here, and this is the remarkable thing about chess. So all of that stuff was avoided by white, but black is not obliged to cash out the queen for two rooks. Instead, in this variation, he plays queen takes f4. He's just dismantling the center, and we've got this as an extra target, this h4 pawn. So, okay, nothing spectacularly bad for white, it seems, but he is losing some key pawns now. Yeah, he plays this e6, so he's losing some key pawns. Bishop c2 seems to put him in survival mode on that d file, at least for the moment. So the game continues after all that. Yeah, the interesting stuff was behind the scenes there if h4 hadn't been played. But this is definitely a very, very nice position for black still. He's in the driving seat. Knight d4 now. King comes up. Queen f6. Rook h5, torturing white's h4 now. Knight e6, threatening knight f4. So another pawn's biting the dust, because if g3, that looks terrible to play. Well, actually, we can just take here, winning another pawn. Check. So, rook f3. Yeah, Magnus Carlsen's been munched here in this game. He's now 2 pawns down. And it's probably, at this level, nearly like resignable. If he ever takes this pawn, then black, if he takes here, black could even take here, because this isn't good for white. So it's 2 pawns down basically. It carries on being 2 pawns down. f5. And there's check. King comes up. It looks as though some nuisance pressure on g6 though is emerging. And it seems here after knight f4, hold on, isn't there g3? So we can play this. g3 wasn't tested actually. White plays bishop b5 here. If white played g3, well, there's a reason actually. This this bishop is attacked. Yeah, it wasn't just defending g6. The bishop's attacked. So if g3, we just take here. That's fine for black. So the bishop went here. Rook e5 hitting the bishop again. Now if it takes this pawn, then we've got the check, and rook takes g2. That's fine for black. It's hopeless now for Magnus actually. He has been outplayed. Knight coming to f6. Check. Okay, I know it's only 1 pawn it seems, but this 1 pawn here is pretty lethal. There is a knight e3 check, and then rook e4 for example, just winning like that. That's one way of winning this, but another way was found, king here, just to come in here really aggressively with the king. So threatening to tear white apart with this check now. Takes there. It's still absolutely brilliant for black, this position, because the king's just so aggressive. King h2 with the idea of check winning this pawn now. The king, like we've seen in another game, provides a very high level, sophisticated trump card winner, it seems, in many of these very high level clashes. How advantages get converted into the more aggressive king is kind of sublime in a way, because maybe a lot of us don't estimate the king as such an aggressive piece, but it was silence, as I mentioned. The king is a really aggressive piece, and here this is the final winning move, king h2 here, with this idea of rook f5 check, and Magnus decides here to throw in the towel. He resigns in this position. It's actually kind of impossible to defend this situation when the opponent's king is really aggressive. It's a slow queen, isn't it, in the position? The king is a slow queen going all around. It's deadly. So here white resigns. Is anyone convinced that white shouldn't resign? Are you convinced white should resign? We can throw some variations. I mean, if rook b5, I think, okay, that does stop the check for a moment, but we go here then, hitting a4. Okay, so if here, then we can actually, even better than this, might even be this. So we're going to play, in fact, things like g3 and check now. So if here, g3, we can take this, and we've got this pawn's not going anywhere, this pawn's queening. That's an example. Okay, but you see in 2 of the games we've seen tonight, how if you can transition an advantage into a more aggressive king, that really is a more human trump card, because doesn't it appeal to our visual senses to have things like rooks on the 7th or a more aggressive king? It's not about calculation, it's about the visual, evidence. It's a trump card which is visually evident, much more aggressive pieces like that. More aggressive king, more aggressive rooks. But yeah, I mean, he had a big advantage with that ingenious idea of bishop takes e4. This is absolute genius. This tactically, the tactical basis for bishop takes e4 here. Yeah, this pawn is absolutely amazing here after d3. So yeah, I hope you got something from these 3 games. There's some exciting stuff, it seems. A lot of the exciting stuff remains behind the scenes, you know. It's not what was played. It's like what wasn't played and why wasn't it played and what would have happened if it wasn't, you know, if stuff wasn't played. So okay, so I hope you got something from these games, and see you next week. Yeah, so have a good week, and yeah, comments or questions on YouTube, and remember, if you like the video, to you know, likes are always appreciated. Yeah, okay, so okay, see you next week. I gotta go now. Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for coming.